Okay, so this is my first question for everyone. Let me make sure you all are seeing what I'm seeing. So I'm defining this as emotional intelligence, but I want you to put in the chat why you think that the first two images when I talk about emotional intelligence are these two white people doing this stare. Put it in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me why this is the image I'm putting up. Okay, thank you for everyone's opinion. I want to focus on a few things about this picture. One, it's a very famous picture. Starting in I believe this was the 19th or 18th century. So 1700s to up to the 1800s. And it was about, this picture is about the Protestant evolution, that emotions are not important, that emotions don't play a role in what we do or who we are. And a lot of you saw the expression in the woman. She's distant. She's not there. Interestingly, not very many of you talked about the guy because he's staring directly at you. He's not despondent because he's looking at you. And I find it interesting in all the comments so far. Let me look. You gotta be sure. Nicole says they are unemotional. Two different focus. One's looking away, one's looking directly. So I want to give you guys an experience that I had going into the professional field. So when I was growing up, my dad had narcolepsy, which meant most of our interactions was when he was asleep. Narcolepsy is this disease that when you become overwhelmed, you go to sleep. Basically, it is a disorder of time that during the daytime, when you're supposed to be awake, your brain thinks you're asleep. And during the nighttime, when the darkness comes, your brain thinks you're awake. So my dad was not there. He 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 was despondent until he was slapped by my mom and said, "Wake up. You need to do something with your boys." I come from a home where with there are three boys. I'm the youngest, my oldest and middle, and I'm the youngest. And my dad was this guy who was staring right at you, but he was not there. My mom, let me ask this. Put it in the, when you hear the word stoic, Stoic, what comes to your imagination? Put it in the chat. When you hear someone is stoic, Stoic, Mariah, no emotion. Come on, you guys. Okay, so you all get this idea, right? I think so. Tanisha, I think said it. I think of Native American without emotion. Okay, that is exactly what Stoic is. Stoics, from a Western perspective, it comes from what is called the Protestant Manifesto. That if you come here to America and it was propaganda, it was advertisement, you come here and you make your living. You till the land, all right? And what that means is, and I'm going to go back to the comment about being Native American, is that you take their land. You take the place they are without emotion. Can you imagine, just for just this situation that we're in, if Americans came here, not Americans, Europeans, white Europeans came here with the emotion and feeling and purpose, do you all think they would have taken the land that belongs to the people that were here? You can answer that question in the chat. Do you think if people were granted emotions when they came here, would have they taken the land and the people that were here? Answer yes or no. No. I'm seeing a lot of no's. I see a probably not. Nope. Yes and no. Oh, I want to focus on a statement that Alina made. Alina said yes and no because they feel jealous and no, know because they would feel bad. I don't know if many of you know this about European history. And Aline, yes, jealousy. You, does anyone know who in the Americas they actually sent here? The people who quote unquote found this country. Does anyone know who they sent here? Just curious. Angela, thank you. Uh, the people that were sent here from the Europeans, as far as white people are concerned, were not their best of best. They were criminals, as Angela states. They were people who were owed because of their issues they had in the Europeans. They owed money to the people that they were servitude to. And so when we think of the great white man, I'm just going to bring this up, or the great white woman, they weren't sent here because they wanted to be sent here. They were sent here to pay back what they owed due to legal or retribution reasons to their servants back in Europe, because the quote unquote best of the best in the uh in Europe, they didn't send them. They sent the worst of the worst to make it so the lands become theirs. Okay. And I'm doing this historical reason to emphasize this point. White people set up this condition according to this picture of this very white Protestant situation where children are raised unemotionally, that the wife, as many of you put, is unsuppo she has no emotion. She's looking somewhere else. And then you have the white guy on the other side who is just this demanding, this is the way it is, and this is where it's going to go. My point being, and I want all of you to hear this very clearly, do not accept the Protestant declaration of emotions. Okay, I'm going to say this again. This idea that we're robots, that we belong in this place because this is where we're at, and this is how it should be, is not the acceptable position that we should be in.
You should have, well, no, kind of have no reason to say we're doing working lunch because we're here all day.
Yeah.
So it's really,
Okay. My point behind this picture is that when we go back to Freud, who is the father of modern psychotherapy, when we get into B.F. Skinner and to Watson, who are the behaviorists who say the only thing that matters is the behavior that is created because of the situation. When we get into the cognition of things and we look at it from an economic perspective, We should not accept those as a totality of the clients who walk into our therapy room. When it comes to healthy recovery, the therapist is supposed to have something we call emotional intelligence. It's meant to be the situation where we understand why people did what they did because of the situation, and we understand the emotional consequences of that. And then we say, hey, how could we make this better? And this is where emotional intelligence in our class comes to. What is it? Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is this ability to understand where I'm at when I walk into a room, but it's also the ability to understand what everyone in the room is reading. Where is the emotional state of everyone else? And it's our ability to walk in that room and say, I'm at this state, they are at this state, but I need to make sure they're cared for in the therapy situation. It's the ability to say, what has happened to me does not matter once I walk through that door. I need to know where I'm at and put that at the entrance and walk into that room and see where all of my group members are. And you have to feel it. You have to emote it. If this was a developmental psychology class, I would talk to you guys about something that's called theory of mind. Theory of mind is this ability that we hopefully gain at 24 months of age, where we realize that I have my emotions and everyone else has their emotions, but they're separate. So this is where a 24-month age child is able to go into a room and see that I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, but I look at mom and she's crying. So I don't instantly cry. I go to mom and say, I'm happy. Why are you sad, mom? Why are you having this emotion? The issue is between becoming a human being and becoming a group facilitator or a therapist is we lose this idea that we should be disassociated with the emotions that are going on in the room. So we learn in middle childhood and adolescence as everyone else is having I'm going to say this, a shitty day. I should have a shitty day. But emotional intelligence is this realization that I can be in a different state and everyone else can be. So I'm happy, they're sad. And emotional intelligence is being able to connect with that person and say, why are you having such a shitty day? That's emotional intelligence. It's not about you becoming them and feeling their pain. It's about this ability to walk into a room, regardless how you feel, and say, there's people with different emotions in this room, and what should I do with that? Do we all understand that concept? Okay. So why does this matter when it comes to group facilitation or even psychotherapy? I want to ask you guys this. Why is it important for you to be able to understand your emotions? And that's irrelevant in that moment. And then to walk into a room and understand everyone else's emotion. Why do you guys think that is important when it comes to a one-on-one therapy or group therapy? Why in that situation does your emotions not matter, but being able to feel the emotions of everyone else and being able to work with that? Why is that important? You could put it in the chat. Jocelyn says, so they feel validated. Come on, I saw a lot of yeses, so all of you have opinions. Do not take things personally, so someone can be right. All right. So you can comment.
Dr. Peterson?
I'm hearing Angela. She has a question. Let's listen to Angela's question.
Well, not a question, I say instead of putting it in chat, but how you were saying, I think, like, talk that we had, the emotions aside and, like, the facilitators for, side, it's like the, behavioral approach when you're talking about it takes a certain kind of level of person to, work with pedophiles and murderers and things like that. And it's your own ideas aside so you can help the other people on the outside.
Angela, I'm going to agree with you at this point because you all are going to come, whether it's in a group setting or the therapeutic setting, you're going to come across a person who says something that doesn't equal your values, your ethics. So Angela, she brought up the idea of what if you're doing addiction counseling, right? What would you all do with this? You're doing addiction counseling, and whether it is in the group setting or the individual setting, they say, I cope. Drinking is my coping mechanism to deal with the idea that it's not acceptable for me to be attracted to children. In the therapeutic setting, not your individual setting, what would you all say in that given situation where someone is disclosing that it's not socially appropriate for me to do this, therefore I drink? So what would you all say to that person?
Hi, Dr. Peterson. It's me, Quintana.
Uh,
I would say, I go back to a lecture, one of the lectures we had previously in the class, if they said something along those lines, we would start asking them why did they feel they need to drink that day, to try to bring the conversation to their present time. And hopefully they can find that connection with you or someone in the room to be able, to feel that they can finally have that place to be vulnerable with someone and, and possibly lead to a little bit of brainstorming, And, when they do leave, they could hopefully make some adjustments in their own methods and then possibly come back to the group again because they left with not just questions being asked to them, but questions that they're questioning themselves with.
I think that's a beautiful answer, and it goes back to Rachel's comment. Can we explore healthier coping skills, right? Is that it's not
Yeah.
right in those situations, people who don't have the emotional intelligence would sit there and go, well, you're disgusting. You're an awful human being, right? And I am hoping that most people in the classroom would be thinking, a person attracted to a child, that's wrong and that's disgusting, right? I'm hoping that all of us would say that, but that's not our job as therapists. Our job is to help them go through something that they feel bad about, they feel guilty about. It's a motivation for them. And it's about finding those different skills that they can deal with it besides going to drinking or besides going to molesting a young child. And that's our job. And I'm going to tell you this, all of you, I'm bringing up an extreme example, but all of you will have to deal with this extreme example. And that's what you should be focusing on, not the easy client, not the one that comes and says, I drink because it makes me feel good. I don't have to deal with the world. No, the client that you should be responding to, whether they're there or not, is a client who says, I drink because it prevents me from molesting a child, or it prevents me for abusing my wife or my children. I use this as a coping skill to not do those things that I've been told is wrong. And this is where I'm getting into emotional intelligence, is because emotional intelligence says, I don't respond on my own emotion. I don't say, and I'm going to put this bluntly, if you have children around you, please put some headphones on or something else. Emotional intelligence is when someone comes to you and says, I drink because it prevents me from molesting children. I'm going to stay on this track. Emotional intelligence says, you're fucking disgusting and you're an ugly person and you don't belong here, you son of a bitch. Emotional intelligence goes back to the conversation we just had. Emotional intelligence goes back to, okay, we understand why you drink. Let's figure out a way to do something different. Because drinking is destroying your life, and so is your obsession with children. So we have two addictions that we need to work with you. And it's okay. And we're going to work with it, not against it. How many in the class could actually do that? Give me a yes or no. How many people in the class could actually say, if someone said, I drink or I molest children? How many can deal with that? And if you say no, it's okay. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Oof, I saw an honest response. And I see it depends.
Hello,
Yes?
this is Fladina, and I come from a small community.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, I asked, my relative, why do you keep drinking? Maybe you should think about options to stop drinking. And maybe you could go to counseling or go to one of them residentials that help you stop drinking. And the answer I got from her was, I don't want to do it because I was molested by my uncle when I was young, and I just cannot stop drinking. Drinking's the only solution that makes me forget about what I had went through. And that's why I cannot have kids, because all this that happened, ruined me inside. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, if I keep drinking, because I already got, her body got ruined. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Uh, can you repeat that about ruined? What did you just say about ruined? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what did you mean by that person said I was ruined inside? Jocelyn's saying trauma. But trauma is such a vague term. And this is what you all are going to hate about this class. Is we're not going to leave it at trauma is what ruined people. What is trauma? What is trauma? I'm asking you guys, what is trauma?
I think it's like something that happened to you that you would not imagine happened to you, but it did happen to you. And it's something that it's stuck in your head. You keep thinking about it.
Okay. And Mariah says trauma can be different for every person, and I agree with that. Did I tell you guys the story about the two individuals that were in it was one of my first jobs coming out of my bachelor's degree is I was a manager of a women's and children's crisis shelter who went through domestic violence. Have I told you guys this story before between these two individuals?
No.
Okay. So when I started there were these it was a year after I started there. There were these two women that happened to come in at the same time. There was one woman who came there because she was in the ER for 6 weeks. She had been brutally raped. She'd been beaten. She'd been everything that you could imagine. She was like a week of unconsciousness before the 6 weeks she ended up there. And then there was this other woman who arrived at the same time. I don't know why. Maybe they needed this, or someone was teaching me a lesson, or both. There was this other woman who came there who she came there because her husband had beat her for the first time. And the police just said, you know what, we need to get this person out of there. She came there and was there. So we have two people, one who had been abused at the first time, and one who was spent the last 6 weeks in the hospital, who was brutally raped. Okay, in the chat, tell me who had the most trauma symptoms. One, brutally raped. Two, first time experience. Who had the most trauma experiences? I'm seeing both, none. The first.
By none, I meant like you can't, um, sorry, I don't want anybody to take it wrong. By me saying none, I feel like it's you can't measure trauma. I don't feel like that is something that can be measured as far as who, received the worst experience. That it's individually, I feel like that's something that can be individually, I guess, measured by themselves, because we as people who don't, it hasn't happened to, it's hard for us to say, oh, this person received, was worse, or this person was worse because it was her first time. So that's what I meant by none. So
No. Everyone, I want, keep, don't unmute yourself. I want you to say that again. Can you repeat what you just said? Because I want everyone to hear it.
if I can remember what I said. I meant by trauma cannot be measured. And it's based on each individual case as far as the individual and what they experience. And it's something that we have never experienced. So therefore we cannot judge who received more trauma, whether it was your first time or repeated times. It's just something that we can't really determine.
Beautifully stated, because this is what happened with those two individuals. And so everyone, I've seen a wide variety of this, and that's why I wanted her to repeat what she stated. The person who was severely raped, and she ended up spending 6 weeks in the hospital and everything, she presented herself as, I'm okay. I go on. I live my life. I don't have any trauma. I'm not gonna go down that route. You guys, you think that what happened to me was trauma. Ha ha ha. Okay, the first person I described, this is the memory that comes to mind. I went to the shelter one day, and she had cracked one of her fingernails. She had very good fingernails, and she was in a
Look at him.
fetal
Look at
position.
how cute he looks running with the.
Give me that. Give me that. Give me that.
Look at how he just.
She was in a fetal position. She had a complete trauma response to her fingernail being cracked. So in the chat, based on what your fellow student said, what is the difference between those two? Tell me. Put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Tell me why someone who had just had her finger thing versus the woman who was in a ER for 6 months, 6 weeks, excuse me. The 6-week person, I'm fine. The person who had been abused for the first time by an abuser she cracked her fingernail and she went into a complete trauma response. What's the difference? Put it in the chat or unmute yourself. And this is just an example. Okay. Everyone with a question mark in the comment, you're getting this perfectly. So tell me, as a therapist, now that you're all getting this, tell me, as a therapist, should you respond to each of them differently? And this is where we're going to get to emotional intelligence. I see some no's, yes, yes, no, yes, yes. There's no right or wrong answer on this way, by the way. Okay, thank you. Similar responses to both.
What was the question?
How should you respond to both of those different situations? One had been what, according to society, would been more traumatizing, and the other one was less. But the lesser one had less of a trauma response. As a therapist, how should you respond to both? I'm seeing some no, similar, yes, both. Read the room. I want everyone to look at Angela's response. Look at Angela's response, everyone. Those who said no or yes, you're not right or wrong, but I want everyone to look at Angela's response. Here's the thing. Trauma affects us all differently, but it is dependent upon the situation how we should respond. So tell me, I'm just curious, everyone, put it in the chat, unmute yourself. What response would you give to one person versus the other based on what Angela said? And I don't get me wrong, I'm calling out Angela, but a lot of you said the similar thing. And why would when we let's call the person who was severely raped 6 weeks, let's call her Anne, and let's call the other person Stephanie. Why is it when you walk into that room and Anne says, nothing happened to me, but Stephanie is like, oh my God, I broke my nail and I can't deal with it. I can't do. Why? What should you do in those two situations? Regardless of what your perception is. Based on what Angela said and a few of others said yes and no.
Hi, Dr. Peterson. It's me,
Yes.
Quintana again.
Okay.
In this part, I would say, along the line of what Angela said as well, like it could be anything, any of their senses that could have triggered, a memory. And our memory, as we learned recently, that it's stored in our hippocampus, and that part isn't area of our brain is where we get a reaction of fear. So looking around, we could observe what could have, caused them to be afraid, to cause that emotion, and then from that point, just continue talking to them. So it really could be a different memory that they could have regressed some time ago that could be triggered and just came out like that.
Perfectly said. And maybe Tanisha said maybe one was raised differently and they have different coping skills. I would approach them with appropriate care. Donna, you have your hand up. What's your comment? Please tell us.
Oh, Dana, right?
Dana, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
I'm horrible with
I
names.
get Donna all the time because I'm in Southern Arizona, Tucson. Anyway, so I added that, well, on there I put that, with the one who's more calm and like, seems to be like able to cope, just to keep kind of letting them lead the conversation and ask questions accordingly. And then the one who's hyperactive or reacting, you could, I would say, just try to keep them like in a calm tone, just keep talking to them so that they're kind of calming down. But I would think that you would need to make sure there was nothing around them that they could hurt themselves with or on. Maybe I just was wondering if that was something that you would need to be aware of as well.
I think that's a perfect conversation point because it leads us into this next topic. So both of these people had different trauma reactions. One physically reacted to something that just happened to her because it didn't affect her in the past. The other one, she had a history of trauma. She could predict trauma. And so in that moment, she was okay. So let me give you the second point of this discussion. So the person who would crack her nail and she'd go into a trauma response, I could put my hand on her shoulder and say it will be okay. Guess who I was not able to do that with the other one that seemed okay? Yeah. Why do you think I was not able? Even though she seemed okay, she's like, this didn't affect me, blah, blah, blah. But the moment I touched her shoulder, she went into a trauma response. Why do you guys think that happened? Okay,
Maybe it was a trigger.
a trigger. What's a trigger though?
Like if she was maybe attacked, or maybe because you're a male as well, maybe that was like the kind of like her response, like she was just responding to that, like happening before or prior, maybe when she was affected. And uh it's like a physical kind of response, and so like it triggered that physical uh act that happened prior, and so then it may have just pushed her into that like reactive mode even more.
Mhm. Okay. And this is my point. Where we're going with emotional intelligence, and you stated it perfectly, and a lot of people in the chat did, is that as therapists, either in the group setting or the individual setting, we need to realize that we just don't hear. That's not our only sense. Our sense is touch, smell. What else? Come on, we have 5 senses. What are they? So we've done hearing, we've done touch, we've done smell. What are the other two? Taste, sight, seeing. Okay. So when someone comes to us and they seem okay, does that give us as therapists permission to come pat them on the back? Does that give us permission to say, hey, you smell good today? No. And this is where we're going with the emotional intelligence piece, is we have to realize that everyone besides us do not have the same experience we do. They don't. Just because we're told that we're therapists and everything is auditory doesn't mean someone will learn something. Do you all get that? I want to make sure, because I spent the last class saying this stuff. Do you all get that therapy, group counseling is not about you saying stuff or other group members saying stuff, that we have to pay attention to all five senses? Do we all get this at this point? Yes, yes, yes. I'm seeing. Okay. I think I've drilled that in. Good, good. Because that's what emotional intelligence is about. It's not about realizing that what I hear and what I see is the only thing important. When I see someone uncomfortable in a group setting, even though everyone is saying the right thing, I might be wrong. It might be a smell, a touch, or something else that is making that client uncomfortable. It may have nothing to do with the social situation. So as a therapist, my job is to investigate why certain clients trigger, I'll use this word because a lot of you use this in the chat. Why did some people trigger to my motivational moment where I said all these awesome things, but there was these two or three who were like, I don't think I'm going to come here next week. And you could see that in their face and in their personality and who they are towards you. Has anyone put this in the chat? You said the most motivational thing you could in a group. How many have experienced someone who was like, F you to that? How many because we're talking about group work, how many have experienced the F you moment? Dana has. Angela has not experienced that. I'll promise that you will. I have. Ah. All right. The comment that I want you all to pay attention to, and I apologize about this because, I can't say names right, and I always get this wrong. Lindy said, yeah, they say I know that already. And I'm going to go down here. Please correct me if I'm wrong on your names. Tashina said, probably have, just can't remember. Why are those two statements important? And it's not because they're bad or wrong or anything else. Why did what Lindy said and Tashina said have so much importance in this class?
Probably because we're going to experience it often and more than we think we would.
Mm-hmm. That's reason one, and the most important reason. Oh, did everyone see what Heather put in the chat? I want to highlight this for just a minute. I want everyone to go to the chat and listen to what Heather said. Does everyone get what Heather, can you unmute yourself and say why you did that comment, please?
It just seemed as if it wasn't that significant to them. So that was why one of them didn't recall that she had gone through that before.
Wow, did everyone hear that? Does everyone understand the profound statement that Heather just made? And I'll get to some of you others too. Does everyone understand the profound statement that Heather just made? It wasn't important at that moment. Right? Okay, there's another statement I wanted to get to. Okay, I want to hold on. Okay, please correct me if I'm wrong. Landis, is that how you say your name? Landis Reed? Okay. I told you guys I was bad with names. All right. Did everyone see what Landis said? He said, because one cares about what everyone says and the others doesn't care about everyone says. Does everyone understand what Landis is saying here, especially in the group setting? Okay. And this is why it's important when you go into the group setting, you have to set up this environment that everyone can say anything they want without being judged. In a sense, you are the coach. You are the person who says, we don't judge each other here. I want everybody to comment on this. So if I had those two women in a group and we were talking about sexual assault, should have I judged those two women differently because one has a broken fingernail and the other one is like, I'm okay? How should have I judged that as a therapist if those two were in the same group? How do you think I should have judged that situation? And then I'll bring up my mistake that I made once you guys give me your feedback. Angela, thank you. It is a tricky question. They both have different situations. Ah, okay, here we go. Because none of you were wrong in your thing, but I want everyone to read what Jocelyn said. And what, yeah, I always get this name wrong. Quintana, did I say that right?
Quintana or just Tana is fine too,
Okay,
actually.
all right, all right. And Heather, so I want you to read these three responses. No one else was wrong. You were all getting to the same thing, but I want you to read what Jocelyn and Quintana and Heather put. Why is it that I'm focusing on their statements? You guys are hating me because there's only 3 minutes left. And I'm still asking questions. Why am I focusing on their statements even though everyone else was right? Oh, did everyone see what Kim put? Did everyone see what Daphne put? I'm hoping I'm saying this right. Lindy put? I hope I put that right. Okay, so this is going to be my last question for today because we only have 2 minutes left. If you lack emotional intelligence, what all would you be telling me today based on the questions I've asked? Meaning, if you don't understand emotions and feelings of others and they're separate from you, what makes everything I said today and everything your fellow students said today, everyone did an awesome job? Why is everything that we said is bullshit today? And you could be totally like the most obnoxious person right now, and it doesn't matter. Why emotional intelligence matters? Why is that we all have to stop, understand our emotional state, but be within someone else's emotional state to help them? Does everyone understand the question that I'm asking?
So if you didn't have emotional intelligence, you would
Yeah.
just be like, it's not my problem. They're the ones that have that problem. So you would probably just not even offer to help and you just leave them alone. Or
And I'm
something.
going to
Is that the question or what you were asking?
that's a beautiful answer, and I'm seeing a bunch of beautiful answers in the chat. How many in this class who have dealt with people in the social service area that you felt didn't give a shit about you, that just saw you as another number? Raise your hand or just put something up, put it in the chat. How many in here have went to a social services office and felt like they just didn't give a fuck about you? I'm seeing a lot of hands raised. I'm seeing a lot of chat. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, I'm gonna leave you guys with this because we're over time. If you graduate from college with either going into counseling, social work, whatever it is, whatever you're going into, 90% of you will not go into counseling and therapy or social work. Only 10% of you will be in the field of helping people. Okay, I want to repeat this just to emphasize this point. Out of this class, we have 25 in here. Only 5 of you will actually use the skills you learn in college to go on and help people. The other 9 out of 10 of you will go into a different field. Because we don't learn this skill. I'm sorry, Rachel, I know it's not encouraging, but that's the fact. Only a few of us will actually use what we use and go on and be these great therapists. Some of us will go on and be those miserable son of a bitches that we all deal with in social services. And this is the thing that I want all of you to focus on between now and Thursday when we go into this conversation about emotional intelligence. Are you willing to be that 10%? Or are we wasting time in this class? What you guys will owe when you get to your social work or your counseling place? Because if you guys don't do this now, it's a waste of your fucking time. Okay? Anyways, we've gone over time. We're at 17, and this is just a topic I'm very passionate about. So I'm going to escape out of here.
Hi. So I just wanted to say that I feel like the ones who have experienced that what is it you said? I went to a counselor for substance abuse, and she was a middle-aged, Caucasian woman who I felt when I walked in immediately judged me based off my background that I written on paper. The
Mhm.
questions that I answered, and I remember